Hey, Annie, guess what?
What?
We just launched a Business of Biotech newsletter.
Yeah?
Yeah. I know what you're thinking.
What am I thinking?
We don't need another newsletter.
Yeah, I might have been thinking that.
Annie, I swear on my grandpa's grave, you're going to like this newsletter.
That's a pretty bold swear, Matt.
Hear me out. It's monthly, only once a month. It's ad-free, and it's modeled after the Business of Biotech podcast. It's got the same insight from the builders of biotech that you see in the podcast. So what's not to like?
That actually sounds like it doesn't suck.
Pretty high praise, Annie. Check it out. bioprocessonline.com/BOB. Go there and sign up for this newsletter. You won't regret it. Everyone knows the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the nonprofit that in 2021 alone put $6.7 billion into more than 2,000 grants aimed at fighting poverty, disease, and inequity on a global scale. But you might not have known that among those efforts is a full-fledged nonprofit preclinical development through phase 3 clinical biopharma company called the Bill and Melinda Gates Medical Research Institute. Gates MRI focuses its therapeutic and vaccine development efforts on TB, malaria, diarrheal disease, and maternal, newborn, and child illnesses in the low and middle income countries most impacted by them. I'm Matt Pillar, and we're spending today's episode of the Business of Biotech with Gates MRI Head of Chemistry, Manufacturing, and Controls, Dr. Piper Trelstad, who brings 22 years of experience at heavyweights, including Merck and Takeda, to her role at the Institute. Dr. Trelstad, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. How am I doing with your last name? Trelstad? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
You got it. You got it perfectly.
Good. I should have asked you that before we started recording, but it just occurred to me. I want to make sure I'm doing that right. So I'm super excited to learn about Gates MRI, and I'm super excited to learn about you. And I want to start. I guess I want to start with the MRI because, as I mentioned in my intro, I think everyone in the world, right? Everyone with access in the world is aware of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the great work that they do. But I think far fewer are aware of the fact that there's a full-fledged clinical biopharma company associated with that effort. So, just give us give us the pitch on that. Give us the 30,000-foot view on the MRI.
So the Bill and Melinda Gates Medical Research Institute is a nonprofit dedicated to the development of vaccines and therapeutics that tackle some significant human or global health challenges for which the investment incentives would be fairly limited for more traditional pharma or biotech. We work through collaborative partners and organizations. So for instance, in the CMC space, we don't have our own laboratories or manufacturing facilities. We're really partnering with others, and we do that across the organization. But we're a full-fledged product development organization. We do work from preclinical. We do all of the process and analytical development required to develop these products. And then we have a full clinical program from first in human and phase 1 studies all the way through pivotal studies, pivotal phase 3 studies. So we do it all. And we manage the global regulatory interactions as well.
Give us a sense for how, I guess, the size and scope of the organization as it sits today.
So we have about 125 employees of the Gates MRI, plus a number of consultant experts that we use. So we're a pretty small organization. We continue to grow, but we will be small, but we like to think that we're also nimble as we try to tackle these really important challenges.
For sure. Yeah. And as I noted earlier, you guys are focused on TB, malaria, diarrheal diseases, maternal, newborn, and child illness. Why those indications?
So we're, and as you mentioned, an affiliate of the Gates Foundation. And so our areas of focus are very much aligned with the priorities of the Gates Foundation. And so those disease areas, tuberculosis, malaria, the enteric and diarrheal diseases, and maternal and neonatal health, those are areas that disproportionately, or diseases that disproportionately impact low and middle income countries. And that's really where, again, those investments incentives are limited. And so an organization like ourselves can really make a difference in moving those products through the development so that ultimately we can get viable products to the people who so desperately need them.
Yeah. All right. Now here's where I want to dig in a little bit. I want to dig in a little bit on the functionality at the MRI that enables this, because I'm doing the math here, right? Dr. Trelstad, I'm thinking limited investment incentives. Those are words you've used a few times here. Serving low and middle income countries via a nonprofit. So give us some sense. You can start wherever you want to with this question, but give us some sense as to how the institute is able to, these are big swings. They're obviously big indications with huge patient populations. Start giving us some sense for how the institute is going about doing that all important business without a whole bunch of investment incentive, without building efficiency. How are you building efficiency into the mechanism? Again, it's a great big giant question. You can kind of start wherever you'd like to.
So we most of our employees come from the pharmaceutical or biotech industry. I think something like 95% of the folks on our team bring a tremendous amount of experience, and many of those, maybe a couple decades of experience. So we have a lot of experience, and we're really bringing that to bear on these disease areas. And so, with that team that we have, with that focus and the collaboration that we have with our partners across industry, we're able to take some of the risks with moving forward with these programs. For instance, our tuberculosis vaccine, that is a disease that a quarter of the world's population has latent tuberculosis. About 10.5 million cases are active each year, and there are about 1.5 million deaths each year. So it's a huge problem, but the size of a study to look at a tuberculosis vaccine is enormous. Something that's sort of 25,000 subjects. So that's an enormous study. That's a tremendous investment. So it really takes an organization like ours, with the funding that we can kind of rally to be able to drive that. And again, having the expertise that we have on our team really enables us to do that in an effective way, so that when that is successful, we'll be able to have a huge impact on tuberculosis.
Yeah. So it sounds like, it almost sounds like you're saying it's advantageous to be in a nonprofit situation tackling that indication, perhaps more advantageous in ways than it would be if you were
I think, every organization has an important role. But we do have a role within this, kind of the ecosystem. There are these products that, again, those investment incentives are limited. And so, having an organization like us that can step in and move those forward is valuable. But that doesn't take away from all of the very important work that's being done by the rest of the industry as well. So there's certainly impact happening in all different directions, but
Sure.
there is an important role for an organization like ours as well.
Yeah. How much how valuable is it to the institute to be able to carry the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Association? Like when you walk into a situation where perhaps you need a partner or lab space, I mean, can you pretty much say like, hey, we're the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's MRI. Let's work together. And they're like, okay.
And certainly there is a huge amount of name recognition, just given the great work that the foundation has done, and that certainly helps. But at the end of the day, we need to build our own relationships and move the programs forward on our own. But for sure that name goes far.
Yeah, for sure. So you joined the institute just recently, about a year, going on a year ago, right? January 22.
Beginning of the year. So a few more weeks and it'll be a full year for me.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Happy 1 year anniversary almost. You spent the previous 22 years doing process and tech dev at companies like Merck and Takeda. So I'm curious. I want to kind of dig into your psyche and thought process a little bit. Those are comfortable companies to work for. It's a comfortable place to be. And I speak with a lot of biopharma execs who have left, sort of the comfort of a nice career trajectory in big pharma for new and emerging bio. But again, those companies are pursuing well funded and often pursuing revenue. here we have an exec like you leaving those comforts for a nonprofit, albeit a well recognized, well funded nonprofit. But tell me a little bit about why you did that and how it felt.
Yeah, so I have a number of friends and former colleagues who are working or have been working in global health nonprofits. And so it's always been something that I've thought about at some stage in my career that I would like to do. I've always worked in vaccines, and the impact of vaccines is very clear in terms of disease reduction and prevention. But the impact of these global health nonprofits like the Gates MRI really allows you to expand that impact. And that was very attractive to me. So when the opportunity came up for the CMC role, it was an opportunity that I couldn't turn down. So it's been a great place. The potential impact is enormous. The team is amazing. And for me, it's also a chance to a real learning opportunity too, given the number of different modalities that we work on at the Gates MRI.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Let me just drill down on that question real quick. The modalities. So your experiences at Merck and Takeda, maybe compare and contrast a little bit, like the exposure that you've gotten now that you're at the MRI. What have you been exposed to in terms of new modalities?
Again, my experience has been in vaccines, and we do have a couple really important and exciting vaccines that we're working on here. So we have a recombinant protein vaccine that we're working on, the one I just spoke about for tuberculosis. We have a glycoconjugate vaccine that we're working on with Shigella. So again, two pretty different types of vaccines. And then, but we also have a monoclonal antibody that we're working on for the prevention of malaria in young children. We're also working on a tuberculosis drug regimen. So this is small molecule products looking at reduce the duration of a tuberculosis treatment from the standard of care, which is about 6 months now, to something much shorter to avoid resistance and help with adherence to the drug program. That's small molecules, so that's quite a ways away from vaccines. And we even have a probiotic, a B. infantis probiotic. It's in microorganisms that's naturally found in infants' guts and helps to break down mother's milk. And it's been observed that you give severely underweight infants this B. infantis probiotic, it can result in significant weight gain. And so we're doing a pretty controlled study to be able to affirm that, hopefully to support a WHO recommendation. So for me, kind of from a role in CMC where I focus mainly on vaccines, my world is broadened quite a bit to, cover those monoclonal antibodies and probiotics and small molecules as well as two very interesting vaccines.
Yeah, that is interesting. A question just popped in my head. I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball at here. It just occurred to me as I was thinking about this, like obviously, Bill and Melinda Gates, Bill Gates coming from high tech IT, building his career and his wealth there, then running the foundation, and then starting a therapeutic institute, therapeutic development. And you're in CMC, so this is all kind of coming together in my head right now. So it's going to be an ill-formed question, but I'm gonna throw it at you anyway. I've been having a lot of discussions with folks in the CMC world of late about the application of technology to ease things like regulatory submissions, and even on the process development side, create a feedback loop that wasn't previous there in an efficient manner. Plenty of applications for things like machine learning and deep learning and algorithmic applications to streamline the CMC processes. So I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier. It just occurred to me, like, does the foundation, given its association obviously with Bill Gates, probably access to some pretty high tech, would you consider the institute advanced in terms of its adoption of technology around the CMC effort, or are you doing anything unique there?
So the foundation is certainly doing some really interesting work in that space. On our end, we're really about trying to drive these programs forward. In some cases, we've been able to utilize some advances maybe to bring our cost of goods down. That's something that's pretty important. And so, for instance, for a monoclonal antibody, we've are working with a high yielding cell line, and that allows us to get our cost of goods down so that those that treatment can be comparable in cost to chemo prophylaxis treatment for malaria. So there's some things like that where we were able to incorporate it, but really our goal is to get these products through the development process so they can get to the people who need them. Where we can utilize technology to meet that goal, we're all about it. But we're not driving sort of technology for its own sake. There is certainly at the foundation there looking at where there can be some advances, and when those become available and we can bring them in, we would certainly welcome that.
Yeah. That's good. I apologize for throwing the curveball. My mind just automatically goes to like, Bill and some super talented group of developers doing some skunkworks operation in an experimental capacity,
No, and those, and that can be incredibly impactful, over time. Those might take a few attempts before one of those bears fruit. So.
When you're striving to excel in a new arena, the best guides are the ones already doing it well. The Business of Biotech brings those voices forward to help new and emerging biopharmas turn their innovations, like mRNA and cell and gene therapies, into clinical realities. Tune in and subscribe for insights on hiring, regulatory, and other need-to-know topics for biopharma leaders. The podcast is brought to you in collaboration with Cytiva. Check out their resources at cytiva.com/emerging biotech. That's CYTIVA.com/emerging biotech. The other thing I wanted to talk with you about is that, it's, again, speaking of CMC, I kind of pride myself on my record of interviewing female biopharma executives. We go out of our way to make sure that, we're as diverse as we possibly can. And sometimes that's a challenge because even at the executive level, the ratio is what it is. I don't know what it is, but everybody knows it's skewed, right? Like it's easy to get male biopharma execs on the pod, and not so easy to get female. But it becomes even more difficult, I think, at levels like yours, like the CMC, when you get into a more technical capacity. I think the ratio is skewed even more. It's often difficult, for us to procure female execs in the tech space. So I'm curious about, I guess at a high level, just what your thoughts are on the why behind that.
I think that in CMC, we see, many of the same challenges that you see kind of across the pharmaceutical industry with far more women lower in the organization than you see at the tops of these organizations. But I do think that's changing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're seeing that evolve. And again, you looking kind of across the industry, that pharmaceutical executives, they're kind of getting close to 30% are women, and in biotech, it's even a little higher than that. And I think, within CMC, again, it's sort of a gradual increase. So in here at the Gates MRI, I think we really embody that. We do have quite a few of our leaders who are women. So our chief operating officer is a woman, our head of regulatory, our head of strategy, and of course myself as well, are women. So yeah.
What do you think can be done or should be? What should industry and perhaps academia be doing to I guess further progress or enable women to work in more technical capacities in the space?
So I think some of it's starting to happen, and it needs to continue. I really think it takes a concerted effort from the very beginning, from hiring decisions through kind of best practices to retain and support all of your employees. I think those are the types of things that we need to keep doing. Obviously we try to do that here at the Gates MRI to really, by having 5 of us on our leadership team who are women, they're really quite a number of potential role models for those talented young female scientists. So as they're thinking about where they can go with their careers, they can look up and see, wow, there are a number of women that are kind of out there being in leadership roles. So I think it can have a little bit of a snowball effect. And certainly early on, I mean, just in our communities, as children are kind of growing up, making sure that there are opportunities for girls to consider advancing their studies in the sciences. That's something else that really, I think it takes focus. We need to kind of tackle it at every level of through society to ensure that we have leaders at the tops of these organizations, but really have that strong pipeline throughout.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any specific things that you and some of the other female execs at Gates MRI or at Merck Takeda, your previous experiences, any specific things that you're involved with or doing to help nurture that along? I mean, I'm thinking about it, I don't know, associations like Women in Bio or more formalized mentorship programs, perhaps within the institute. And I'm thinking about it, in terms of my own career trajectory. There was a time when I was young and new in my positions, where I'd look perhaps and see an exec or someone up the ladder who I could see myself working on that trajectory, but maybe I didn't know how. Maybe I didn't think I was capable, right? Like, and I think so. I think it's important to have those people in position to look up to and kind of, I guess, inspire a career trajectory. But I'm just wondering if there are any more specific avenues or opportunities that you can take or that you are taking to sort of, lift younger women in the space up.
Yeah, I think there are a few things. I mean, certainly the women's industry groups, like the Women in Bio, like the Healthcare Business Women's Association, and others are kind of important forums for women to get together and kind of talk about the issues that they're facing and opportunities, and really just to create that opportunity for collaboration, which is so nice. I also think it's really important to have mentors and sponsors throughout these organizations. That's really where, when you're having those doubts that you described yourself, to be able to have somebody who can maybe give you some coaching or help to advise you as you're thinking about that. And even having sponsors who you might sort of say, oh, wow, that's a talented person, male or female, and ensuring that they get an opportunity to try to realize the potential that they may have. For me, when I made some significant steps in my career, it's often been because of the sort of advocacy of a sponsor. And so, I try to give back in that way, but I think that's really important. And it's not just women, doing that for other women. It's really needs to be kind of leaders across the board who are thinking in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, you referenced your own experience throughout your career, being the recipient of some mentorship and advocacy. Tell me, I don't know, just share with me a little bit about your 22 years in the space as a woman. What's changed? What still needs to change? I don't know, maybe some anecdotes about, what it was like maybe 22 years ago versus today, and where you think things still need to improve.
So I think that representation is probably at all levels of an organization that's probably one area that's changed the most. When I was starting, there really weren't that many leaders higher up in the organization. And now, while we're not at parity, as we talked about earlier, we're still getting much closer than we are. And I think I like to think about the Gates MRI as being really a nice representation of that. So not only do we have our 5 leaders on our leadership team, our executive team, but also 4 of our 5 board members have been women, and our founding CEO, Penny Heaton, was a woman. And so I think that really represents that sort of change in representation. And again, creating those role models that younger women can look to sort of say, yes, this is something that I can do. I can see myself doing that. Another change that I think has been impactful across the board for men and women is a change, and maybe this is in society, maybe this is in more than just our industry itself, but that sort of shared responsibility of both parents in raising children. And so definitely seen a shift in terms of the involvement with children, or the men in the organizations I've worked with have demonstrated. In fact, when I joined the Gates MRI, I think there were about as many men on paternity leave as women on maternity leave, and that's really exciting and encouraging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is interesting. What do you think? Just a side question. What do you think has driven that sort of on the male side? Like, what do you think has driven, I guess, that I don't know, maybe awakening's too strong a word, but that comprehension, right? That has led us to a point where men are taking paternity leave, men are taking more responsibility at home. I mean, that's a big question. It's a big sort of social, I guess, question.
Yeah.
But I
and
see
I guess I would
be
be making assumptions, but I assume that they've gotten a taste of it and love it, right? I mean, it's so wonderful to spend that time with your children and watch them grow. And so I think that as we've enabled that, we've said, this is okay. You can take, you can take off time as well. And then that bond forms. And I think we see it continue over time. I think it's a wonderful thing. For everyone. And then also, for their partners, maybe women, that's nice too, because it allows you to share those responsibilities, right? And so then I think that's a really important enabling of progressing your careers, when you can share those home responsibilities as well as the breadwinning responsibilities.
Yeah, for sure. No, I experience it at home for sure. I am consciously aware when I tend to maybe stray away a little bit too far from my responsibilities at home with kids. And I'm also consciously aware of the improvement in my relationship with my wife when I am not straying, right? Like when I'm putting that extra effort in. So yes,
it's a partnership.
Yeah. And the reward system there has to, acknowledgement both ways has to certainly be there. What do you think where do you think there's still opportunity for improvement? I don't think we got to that part. Like, where do you think, where are there perhaps still gaps? You mentioned the parity remains a bit. What needs to happen between now and the point where I'm hosting female execs on the Business of Biotech and we're not even talking about it?
I think we just have to keep progressing, right? So having 30% of our senior leaders as women, it's not enough, right? It needs to be at that 50-50 level. And I think you need, organizations like the Gates MRI, where we're getting pretty darn close to that. And so, how do we continue that and sort of propel that across all of the industry? And it takes a concerted effort. I don't think it's something that's going to happen by chance. It's going to be something that we drive. I do believe it's good business. I mean, having that diversity in your leadership levels and throughout your organization really enables, I think, the best decisions kind of on a day-to-day basis. So but it takes effort, right? It doesn't happen by itself.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what haven't I asked you that I should have, Dr. Trelstad? What did I gloss over too quickly? I know we're on short time here, so
no, I think you've covered everything that we had hoped to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
It's great talking with you.
Yeah, no, the pleasure's mine. I'm glad we were able to make it happen. And you're in the midst of, you mentioned before we started recording, you're in the midst of what is it? Institute Week, did you say?
So we have a number of our employees live remotely, so they don't live in the Boston area. But once a month, we try to get everyone together. So we bring everyone into the Institute and have a number of our program review meetings. We have a town hall. It's really just a nice time to get together to do the work of the Institute, but also to get to know each other a little bit better. Us trying to figure out this hybrid work approach as well, but really trying to get everyone together at least once a month for that week has been really effective.
Yeah, very good. Well, we'll let you get back to Institute Week and spend some time with your colleagues and employees. But yeah, sometime when it's not Institute Week, I'd love to have you back on, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about some of the specifics around the CMC work and progression of the candidates there at the
That would be
Institute.
great. We would love to do that anytime.
Yeah, well, I've enjoyed the early glimpse and the conversation, so we'll look forward to doing that again sometime.
Oh,
Thank you,
great.
Dr. Trelstad.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ben.
So that's Dr. Piper Trelstad, head of CMC at the Bill and Melinda Gates Medical Research Institute. I'm Matt Pillar, and this is the Business of Biotech. If you'd like to learn more about Gates MRI, visit them at gatesmri.org. If you'd like to learn more about the support of our sponsor, Cytiva, visit cytiva.com/emerging biotech. And if you like listening in on conversations with the leaders of biopharma, like Dr. Trelstad, subscribe to the Business of Biotech and sign up for our newsletter at bioprocessonline.com/BOB. Be sure to leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. And as always, thanks for listening.